Good morning, afternoon, everyone. I know it's Saturday, and my name is Jen Lee, aka Rebel Esquire, a friendly bankruptcy nerd superhero who likes to talk about these things on a Saturday. And so, thanks for tuning in or for watching the replay if you're off doing better things on a Saturday. And today, this is a one-off bankruptcy nerd alert. Every month, I do a quick recap of filings, if bankruptcy filings have increased, decreased, what the numbers look like, and that kind of thing. And I swear I am not Dr. Evil. I don't have my pinky up going $1 million or anything like that. But I also think that this is something that people need to be looking for, especially lawyers with the demand in the marketplace and taking a look at what's happening in the economy and economic indicators. So I promise that this isn't supposed to be a um, uh, the sky is falling chicken little every time. However, I will say that it is important to pay attention to these numbers. So I do have a lovely presentation to pop up here so that I stay on track and remember what I'm supposed to be talking about on each slide. So let's see here. We're good. And I'm going to turn off my video so that I'm not distracted up in the corner. There we go. So this one is updated economic indicators. I've talked about this and other quick bankruptcy nerd alerts where we're just trying to pay attention to what's going on. A couple months ago, we talked about the searches for bankruptcy and foreclosures and things like that had pretty much skyrocketed in the last 8 months. And we're seeing that turn into bankruptcy filings. It's usually a 6 to 8 month lag or leading indicator. I am not an economist, just as for fair disclosure. This is purely based on my experience as a bankruptcy attorney and watching financial stress on people and how it kind of trickles into bankruptcy. So a little bit about me. I do have an online course. I help lawyers add bankruptcy as a practice area from start to finish, from cash flow forecasting to what systems you need to have, software, um, actual bankruptcy law on Chapter 7 and Chapter 13, primarily from the consumer and small business owner standpoint, and then marketing and case law and those kinds of things. So I am a bankruptcy nerd. I love talking bankruptcy. And it's really fun for me to help other practitioners learn bankruptcy and add it as a practice area. So that's out there and available. Let's jump into some numbers. Credit card debt. So we're going to talk about overall debt too, but let's start with credit card debt. Credit card debt in Q1 of 2021 was total credit card debt in the US was 770 billion. That's what the balances were out there. In Q1 of 2025, just 4 years later, we are at $1.18 trillion. That is a 53% increase in credit card debt in 4 years. That is astronomical increase because as interest rates have gone up as well, that is causing minimum payments to go up and also causing it harder to carry that debt load. So, for example, let's say someone has $10,000 of credit card debt. Back when interest rates were, 15 to 18%, let's say you had good credit and your interest rates were at 15%, your monthly payment, your minimum payment on $10,000 was maybe around $200 a month, $225 a month. Now, credit card APRs are standard between 24 and 28%. I think 25% is kind of the average I'm seeing out there. And that makes your minimum payment go up to over $300 a month. So it has increased payments by 50%, just jumping that interest rate up. So even carrying the same amount of debt, not putting anything new on the cards and just trying to pay it off, the balances are going up. And that's just if there's $10,000 of debt. The average credit card debt in the country right now is between 7,000 and 9,000, depending on your source, because again, anyone can make up numbers. That's why I always caution people. You have to look at all of the underlying assumptions because any number you can make to look like you want it, whatever stat you're trying to make. But So I use $10,000 as my initial example. Most people that are in financial distress and looking at bankruptcy have more than $10,000 of credit card debt, to be honest. And let's say you have $30,000 of credit card debt. That takes your minimum payments from like $650 a month under lower interest rates up to as high as $1,000 a month on the current interest rates. So when we talk about credit card debt, it's important to see how much it's grown, but also that stress of the rising interest rates at the same time is causing financial distress much faster. It's accelerating the financial distress that people are experiencing. Total debt. So total household debt. So this is household debt, like individual household debt. We're not talking about corporations or anything like that. But total household debt at the end of Q1 of 2025 was $18.2 trillion. And that's pretty high. And I would like to compare it to. So we have this weird part of our economy where it's hard to compare numbers sometimes because we had COVID and the economics that happened during COVID were make it hard to do comparisons because there was a lot of stimulus, there was a lot of pausing of things and forbearances. And one of the things it did was it paused a lot of financial stress. And now we're starting to see the impacts of that. So back at the end of 2019, total debt was $14.14 trillion. So there is everyone thought the time the economy was doing pretty well. I will say, as a bankruptcy attorney, my best revenue month ever. And I started in 2010. So I was not around I was still in law school during the 2008 recession. My best month for new clients and retaining bankruptcy clients was Q1 of 2020, before COVID. And we saw it heading into the end of 2019. It had been ramping up pretty drastically. I had to add staff in 2019 to my firm, and no one was talking about it. And I told my close colleagues, I'm like, you better be watching this because bankruptcy filings, I had a lot of small business owners who were already distressed in 2019 leading into 2020 before COVID hit. COVID threw a whole wrench in everything, but my best revenue quarter ever was Q1 of 2020, as far as consults and retention go for bankruptcy. So I'm sharing that to tell you that if COVID had not happened, what we're seeing now likely would have been similar to a ramp up starting in 2020. But because of all the things that had to happen with the economy and finances, it stalled it, and we're seeing it now. So back when there was $14.14 trillion of debt, there was a lot of financial stress. Now we're at 18.2 trillion. And it was slightly higher in Q4 of 2024, but some of that is due to seasonal Christmas, the holidays. Some of that's due to seasonal jump up, sometimes the spike in numbers. So it was slightly higher at the end of Q4 of 2024 than it was at the end of Q1 of 2025. These numbers generally come out a couple months after the quarter ends. It's not as good as my bankruptcy numbers that I can usually get by the third or fourth of the month for the previous month for bankruptcy filings. So that's total debt. Debt is fine. Debt is fine as long as you can pay it and as long as people they're using it to leverage. I know there's all kinds of smart business people out there telling you to leverage other people's money. That only works if you are able to pay it and leverage it. So debt delinquency rates. This is a really important indicator. And what it shows is how many people are late on payments. And what we're seeing right now, so for Q1 of 2025, total balance debt delinquency rates was at 4.3%. And some people, it depends on if you're a numbers person or not, or if you're like percentages and can kind of picture it. Some people are like, well, 4.3%, that's not that big of a deal. I mean, they can be that's not going to have a very big impact. When you're talking about $18 trillion, that's a big number and it can be a big part of it. Also, it is a 19.4% increase over Q4 of 2024. So what that says is between December 31st of 2024 and March 31st of 2025, 19.4% increase in debt delinquency rates happened. That's a big jump for just one quarter. And if you look back, and yes, I'm a total nerd. I love numbers. It's why bankruptcy is one of my favorite practice areas, is because there are so many numbers and things that you can dig into in it. But if you look back to, I had a chart from the the New York Fed Consumer Credit Panel. If you look back to 2003 and you look at the trends, and again, I have Q1 for every year, 2003 to 2025, and you look at the trends. Right now, we are sitting a little bit higher than where we were in 2007 Q1. And where were we at in 2007 for debt delinquency rates? Now, going up higher, you'll see the lagging indicators happen. Like you'll see the delinquency and then it'll snowball from there. So for example, in 2007 Q1, we were a little bit lower than 4.3%. And as delinquencies were rising, interest rates, the foreclosures, mortgage problems that were happening, those kinds of things. Eventually in 2010, it got up to 12% delinquency rates. For delinquency status. So it does go up. But if you think about it, everyone thinks of 2008 as the recession, but the delinquency peaked in 2010. So something to keep in mind. And sometimes it depends on how, like you can do 30-day lates, 60-day lates, 90-day lates, 120-day lates, and severe derogatory is usually how you'll see it listed in delinquency status. But right now, our severe and 120-day lates are a growing part of the equation. And so that is a huge problem for debt delinquency. And again, the reason I talk about this, I want people to be educated, prepared, and informed, both from an attorney standpoint and the consumer standpoint. Consumers make really bad decisions when they're stressed and they don't understand what's going on and they don't have good factual information. And the more attorneys we have out there talking about the underlying problems that are happening, the better off and the better informed consumers will be. That's why I talk about these nerdy things. One more consumer thing here that I'll throw out there, and I won't talk your ear off all day on a Saturday. If you ever want to talk about this stuff, feel free to message me. Student loans have been big in the news with the things that have been new executive orders, new bills, new all kinds of things. This is not a student loan education session, but I wanted to bring it to people's attention, and the way it affects other debt is really important to understand. So student loans, the current numbers out there is about $1.63 trillion of outstanding student loans. There is more student loans outstanding than there are credit card debt. Just putting it out there. Q1 of 2025, 7.74% of student loan accounts were at least 90 days delinquent. So you default on student loans after 270 days delinquency. 90 days is kind of like the serious delinquency where you're starting to that 90 to 120 day mark. May of 2025, there were 10 million in default or delinquency status already for student loans. And then we have August 1st, which was yesterday. And that is when the interest starts accruing again on student loans under the Trump administration, changes that are being made. Interest starts accruing on it, balances are due, garnishments are going to start happening again. So the way this impacts, you don't have to become a student loan expert. However, I highly recommend that you understand at least the options out there for student loans. There are certain plans that have been discontinued. There are still income-based repayment plans out there. So please understand student loans. However, on a macroeconomic level, what this does is it forces other debt to go into default. So if a person or professional is worried about paying their student loans and they're going to get garnished, and student loans can be discharged in bankruptcy, but you have to go through that analysis, and I'm not discussing that today. Student loans are a debt that most will pay over other debt, or maybe should be paying over other debt. So that means other things go delinquent. From a bankruptcy standpoint, a lot of times a bankruptcy will get filed and get rid of all the other debt in order to allow someone to be able to pay back their student loans if they don't qualify to have them discharged in bankruptcy or through some other discharge process. And so a lot of times student loans will drive bankruptcy, not necessarily because of the student loans themselves, but because there's a bunch of other debt and getting rid of the other debt. So that means the other debt that is discharged in bankruptcy is bearing that load. It's a whole political discussion people don't want to talk about always, but I do want to point out that that will drive bankruptcies, because if you are trying to pay your mortgage and credit cards, and depending on your property price, maybe you have a HELOC and you're underwater on it, get rid of that in bankruptcy and you can pay back your student loans, maybe. Bankruptcy is also useful for restructuring student loans. So all of that being said, is there's a ton of student loan debt out there. There are a ton of people who have paid a ton of money towards their student loans and they have a higher balance than when they started. That is going to drive financial stress. It's going to drive other delinquencies, and it's going to drive bankruptcies. So at least have student loans on your radar as an indicator when you're looking at the news. All of that being said, if you're a lawyer and you want to add bankruptcy, we need bankruptcy attorneys. We need good bankruptcy attorneys who understand 7s and 13s and student loans and what people can do with them. And it often is a very complementary practice area. And it's a counter-cyclical practice area, technically speaking, because as people have less and less disposable income to do things, they're not maybe doing estate planning. They're maybe not doing other things that they should be doing with their money from a legal standpoint. So it can be countercyclical. It is also good cash flow if you plan it out correctly. I would argue that bankruptcy is good whether the economy is good or bad, because people have financial problems no matter if it's good or bad. So lawyersuccessnetwork.com is my website. I have a whole course to add bankruptcy as a practice area. I have a bunch of add-ons. We have live versions of it that happen quarterly that you get free access to. And we've got some really cool new things coming up that you'll help you even more. So if you're interested in that, let me know. If you're interested in the nerdy bankruptcy discussions I do every month, please like and subscribe on the Rebel Esquire YouTube channel. And if you have questions, reach out to me. I will stop sharing so you can maybe see my face for the last second here. But again, happy to answer questions, nerdy. I get Facebook Messenger questions all the time talking about nerdy bankruptcy things, and I love it. So reach out if you have questions. Watch those economic indicators. If you see yourself in some of those economic indicators, that's okay too. Make sure that you're informed and educated on what's going on. So I hope everybody has a great Saturday and has as much fun thinking about financial stress and bankruptcy as I do. And I promise I'm not Dr. Evil, but I do want people to be educated, informed, and make good decisions. So have a great